Aloha and good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are. My name is Jürgen Steinmetz, and I'm in Honolulu, Hawaii, joining you from livestream.travel, eTurbo News, and today also from the World Tourism Network. We're going to have a very interesting session this morning about branding and loyalty, and Dr. Elinor Garely will take the floor in just a few minutes and introduce her guest. And I just wanted to let everyone know if you're watching us live on Facebook or on any of the eTurbo News screens, you can simply go to worldtourismevents.com and still sign up to be part of this live audience. If you are part of the live audience, we're going to keep this interactive and open up the floor for questioning. You can raise your hand. You can also type something in the chat, but sometimes it's hard to read all the chats during the event. So don't always count that we see the chats, but we're trying our best. But the easiest way is when it comes to Q&A to raise your hand and we give you the microphone. Those that are joining us from outside, I know we get many emails with questions. Unfortunately, it's technically kind of impossible to check emails at the same time. Um, we don't have a team of people doing this. So you can, if you have questions, yes, you can send us email and then we can to Elinor after the event. Without further delay, and also one more important thing, it's actually a duplicate event today. This one is going to be finished in an hour and 10 minutes, hour 15 minutes max, and then we have a second very interesting session about pure air in hotels. So you cannot just stay tuned, you have to be registered for the other events. So if you haven't done this, also go to worldtourismevents.com and you can register for the next event, and we're going to just switch screens. So hopefully if you like this, the subject is kind of similar in a way. You might want to just stay with us. But without further delay, and thank you for participating, Elinor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Thomas. It's always good to see you. And today I have a fabulous guru in marketing, and his name is Dr. Robert Passikoff. Dr. Passikoff is considered a guru in the world of marketing, with a specific focus on branding and brand loyalty. And as I'm particularly interested in the subject because I consider myself, at least before the pandemic, or an avid shopper with with gold credit cards in some of the major shops. Of course, I had switched my shopping to online, and over this last year and a half, I've been very disappointed in the poor quality and very bad marketing and PR from some of our major brands. So it's really interesting for me, and I hope for everybody else, to hear what the guru of the industry has to say about the the reason that companies are successful, how they turn off the customer, that there is a difference between continuity, loyalty, and brand loyalty, and customer loyalty. And hopefully he will go into some of those considerations. Dr. Passikoff is also an author and has written 2 books and comes out with an annual survey that looks at branding. So Robert, Thomas, if you could just start with the PowerPoint. I just want to make sure that we get a basic understanding of what we're talking about today. Well, the question that I had was whether it's brand loyalty, and we continue to go to the same brand because we're bored, or we're just lazy, or is there a conscious decision about going to the same toilet paper or to the same hotel or flying on the same airline? And that's what how we can figure out whether we are in fact brand loyal, and some of the steps that the companies make in order to get us to be brand loyal. And so it's based on whether we trust the brand, whether we've gotten bad food. I've had, a bad experience from Whole Foods, and so never shop there. So you have to trust the company. You have to be satisfied with the product that you get, and that you go back and purchase and repurchase. And then the companies can decide whether or not they see you as committed and whether you yourself consider yourself as a committed customer. Okay, I guess the rest of our slides are gone away, so I'm going to just turn it right over to Robert. I think you've gotten an introduction. So tell us about what got you interested in brand loyalty from the beginning. Go back in your history a little bit, because your background is diversified, and then how you came up with the idea of doing this study. Unmute yourself.
The way I'm not muted.
Yeah, now you're good.
Okay. The way we got into loyalty was we were looking for a metric that would give us some sense of return on investment. I mean, if you look at the modern world, I don't know, call it 1970, you would reach the point where awareness wasn't enough to be able to drive sale. And after a while, and particularly today, names had become ubiquitous. So if you looked and said, well, who knows the name of Coca-Cola? Every sentient being in the universe knows the name Coca-Cola. But meanwhile, they lose share every year. So awareness in and of itself, distribution in and of itself, wasn't really an indicator that we were looking for. And we finally...
Were you initially looking at this from an advertising perspective or from a PR perspective or sales?
It would have been, well, it was marketing and sales is all that we were concerned about. I mean, it's a business, it's not a hobby. I mean, what you're looking to do is sell something. So if you're not selling something, and this will come in later on to where we are today, but then you end up running advertising and things that just entertain people. And entertainment is good, but it has nothing to do with creating real sales and real positive behavior toward a brand.
But did you start out with an advertising agency, or have you always looked at it from the totality of the marketing perspective?
I started as a marketer and then moved into advertising for a number of years, and then my client side experience is director of research at Citibank, which I point that out as interesting because I was brought in because they were introducing the ATMs at the time.
Oh,
and they couldn't figure out why people were willing to take money out, but not put money in. Yeah, I know it's a weird world. When
logically, yeah, it is a conundrum.
So the problem is this, that you really do have to look at where you've gotten to, you know, from an historical basis. I mean, only because they, you know, if you stop and think in the 60s and even the 70s into the late 70s, most people didn't really, most companies, most brands didn't really give a damn about whether you were buying them or not, whether you were happy or not. I mean, they were out there, they were doing the 4 Ps, your thing is, do you want to do that? Do you want to do this?
No, go ahead. No, go on.
You know, it was operating on, they had a product that basically didn't kill you. They had a basic price that worked. They promoted it, and there was distribution. There was a place to find it, and if you managed that properly, you did okay. The thing is that there wasn't a high degree of concern regarding primacy of product. Cars are a good example. You know, you buy a new car, you drive the car off the lot, the handles would fall off the door. I mean, quality was not job number one. And after a while, I mean, this always strikes me as being, how could you have not seen this? After a while, some smart woman said, you know, if we built something a little bit better than the other guy and the door handles didn't fall off the door, people would be a lot happier with us. And they did. I mean, that's the total quality movement, the ISO 9000 programs that they introduced. And after a while, by about 1985, you had stuff coming out of wherever the hell it was coming out of. And it could have been a product and it could have been a service, but it was mostly the same. I mean, people were pretty okay with stuff. The door handles didn't fall off. The toaster worked. People were happy with what they got. And you know, you said something about at the very beginning about a conscious decision. Well, what was happening was there was a shift from in the decision process, going from more rational aspects of the decision. I mean, there were things that were rationally better, one product than another, one service than another. But when they became all the same, people started to look for additional values within the context of the category that you were talking about. And so what we've seen is that the decision process today is more emotional than it is rational. That the rational stuff really is kind of table stakes. I mean, you've got to be able to perform the basics of what the category demands just to play in the game. And then, of course, where you end up is now you have to be able to meet the expectations that consumers have for the category and for the brands. And that's what we've been, and that's what we figured out a way of how to measure that. Those become leading indicators in terms of brand profitability. It means that we look at the numbers and that down the road, 12, 18 months, we see that the brand is going to do well and is going to make money. Same store sales, visitation.
What part of this process is from the consumer's perspective is conscious, and how much is unconscious?
Good question. Well, I will say this: it depends on the category you're talking about. I mean, let's be fair, categories are categories because.
Okay, let's talk about hotels. So people and the difference between the brand, the points, going 4 points, or the airlines and you want points or status, and price. And some of those are not considered loyalty program.
It's about I would say a 70% emotional, 30% rational.
So that if you decide to stay at a Sheraton or a Marriott or a Four Seasons, you have an emotional relationship with that brand.
Yes. Or they're doing something to push emotional buttons for you.
So it's not just the fact that I'm going to be get a certain status on an airline or get a free upgrade at the hotel.
No. Well, those are two different things. Whether you feel that your personal status has been improved by being at the Ritz-Carlton versus being at the Hilton is really a psychological and emotional aspect of the category. Whether you get an upgrade or not becomes one of those rational aspects of points. I mean, I don't think I sent you the article. Maybe I did send you the article. I wrote an article recently for The Customer, which talks about the fact that this is going to be the 40th year. May of this year is the 40th year of the inception of the airline mileage program. First time. And the reason that I wrote about it was that there was a gentleman by the name of Tom McCann.
Thomas. Yes, I read this. I think I read the article.
Who was a promotion guy, promotion genius, by the way. He was one of my mentors. I worked under him as a research director at one of the largest promotion agencies in the world. And what had happened was 2 years prior, the airline industry had deregulated. And so now what you're looking for is, okay, I need some sort of differentiation so that you're going to love me and pick me better than someone else. And if you remind me, because I'll pull this back to airlines and hotels today, exactly with what's going on. They really didn't know what to do. They had no idea what to do. When you're in a regulated, when you're coming out of a regulated industry, it becomes very difficult. And what Tom came up with was the American airline mileage program, that you would get points for every mile that you flew, or every 10 miles that you flew. And I wrote in the article, I was in the room when he created it. I mean, when you stop and think, well, yeah, okay, everyone's got it. Remember that, everyone's got it. But nobody had it then. And it was the very first, and it was extraordinarily effective.
And which airline was it for?
American Airlines.
I remember that Advantage program when they came out. Yep. I joined at the time. And yes.
Well, everyone joined. The difficulty is this, that when we have a phrase in psychology. I mean, if you want to write, this is the kind of thing, write this down and look at it the next time that you're thinking about what you're going to do. When delight becomes expectation, you're in trouble. Now, you can do, and there are situations that we have now, and the digital world has made it more complex for brands. But here's a travel thing. So you went to your business, you flew to wherever the hell you flew, and I don't care what airline, it doesn't matter. You did it on business, and you went to the hotel, and you dropped your bags off, and you went to some interminable meeting someplace in some city that you didn't really give a damn about. And when it was all over, you went back to the hotel. And lo and behold, someone had turned down the blanket and they put a chocolate on your pillow, a wrapped chocolate. Now, for those of you who have the longevity that I've got and the memory, think about what that was like. That was really cool. I mean, you looked and you went, what a nice thing to do. Because I had a crappy day and chocolate always helps.
Interesting that you had that perspective, because I have a different one.
Well, the perspective changed because delight, once everybody does something, becomes expectation. And so it becomes a poker game. You're going to raise the stakes. So next time you're there, someone will knock on the door and they'll say, oh, we have hot chocolate chip cookies if you'd like. Actually, it was a chocolate chip cookie wrapped, and then someone came by the door with hot chocolate chip cookies, and then someone came by with hot chocolate chip cookies and iced milk, and then maybe now it becomes the open bar on the 11th floor. Doesn't matter. The fact is that your experience changes, your expectations change. And generally speaking, I mean, our index looks at close to 100 categories. Generally speaking, expectations move at what we call the speed of the consumer. They move a lot faster than brands are smart enough to keep up with. I say smart enough because there used to be a time when you followed whatever the hell the brand did. And then it was fine. But now it's your expectations that drive things. And so if you're unhappy, and now welcome to the 21st century in 2021, if you're unhappy, and this is the issue of satisfaction being a lagging indicator and what happened the last time you did something, If you're unhappy, you're going someplace else. If you're
Well,
unhappy, you have 50 different options that you can go to.
well,
By the way, I'm sorry, Elinor. By the way, the points don't really matter. I feel like that game show on TV. But the points don't really matter. And here's why. Because everyone gives out points and everyone lets you join. And so, yeah, I know you sit there and feel like a smart consumer and you kind of go, well, I've got these airlines. And so if I happen to use that airline, I'll get some extra points. But from a loyalty perspective, as creating loyalty, that really isn't the case, because if you look at the United States, for example, I can only speak to the United States. I haven't done the research on Europe. I mean, we've only got 15 or 16 national carriers. And then it turns out that all of you out there belong to like 4.6, on average, 4.6 mileage programs. So you can't be loyal. You can't loyalty. You can't turn around and convince me that you're being loyal to 26.7% of the airlines that are out there. That's not what loyalty is about. I mean, it just
so,
isn't.
so that is not considered then a loyalty
But
program. What is it?
it's extra value. I mean, you know, the people in the business, they want to be kind and they'll call it a continuity program, but it's not even that. I mean, it really isn't. I mean, it just doesn't work the way it used to work. And that's not what loyalty is about. People are not supposed to be renting your loyalty from you.
I just want to circle back to what you were talking about when you started with a good experience, and from your perspective, a chocolate and a cookie was a good experience. Suppose that instead of getting the cookie, you found a bed bug. Does that then change you forever as a loyal customer?
Yeah,
Do you?
I think that it. I'm going to say it depends, and the only reason I'm saying it depends is because I'm a researcher, and I'm going to guess that the answer to your question was yes, but it depends on the percent contribution that something makes to overall loyalty and engagement. For example, um, I did a travel conference in Rome, and the presentation was, "What's a smile worth?" And the answer is, a smile when you check in is worth a lot. Now you can do the equation on, "I'm sorry, your room's not ready," and now things get deducted from that 100% that you've got in your head. You're not doing it rationally, but you sure as hell are doing it emotionally. Although it can be offset when the guy says, "You know what I'd like you to do? Come sit over here. We're going to bring you a glass of champagne. We will be ready in half an hour." I mean, you're talking about management of values that you have to understand what they are in the category. You've got to understand what percent contribution they make to your overall engagement and ultimately your loyalty, and then how you manage it. So what I was going to say, going back to your example, is yeah, I'm thinking that bed bugs is a big negative, in terms of, well, anywhere, um, and that is going to take, I would say, it was insurmountable, but I won't speak for everyone in the world. But I think that, yeah, I think the percent contribution, the negative percent contribution of that is so much that now you go, you know what, I'm not going to be in this hotel anymore.
Did I just lose?
I'm here, but your
Yeah,
presentation is up.
we lost people. I'm here.
No,
I'm
no,
here.
we're here. I don't know. We're all here. Go ahead.
Okay, can you take the slideshow away?
Also, you don't want the slideshow
No,
anymore. Okay, okay. Go ahead.
okay, thank you.
So Elinor, I think, I think the difficulty has always been that it's very hard to find values that are going to be meaningful to consumers. And the difficulty in terms of engendering loyalty. And the difficulty, of course, is that in the digital world, if you are a brand smart enough to come up with something, and I'll give you an example in a minute, years ago, I mean, in the last decade, if you wanted to change something and you did, and now a competitor was looking at you, you were talking about something that was going to take any place from a year to 2 years to institute. These days, with the digital world, if you talk 3 days, if you got a window of 3 days ahead of your competition, it's a lot. And most of the time, the effective pieces tend to be emotional values, or they tend to leverage off emotional values. And they always, not sometimes, they always pay off. I mean, we've done more. This is an example, by the way. I'm allowed to talk about the proprietary work, but our client allows us to talk about it. In the recession, when everything was going to hell, we were doing some work for Hyundai. Hyundai was like a nothing brand back then. I mean, they had just retooled so that
Japanese cars in general were not respected.
That the cars weren't junk, and we came back to them with a study. And I have to say, I wish to God that I had been the person that had created the advertising, but I was not. Our company discovered the value and they translated it, and I give them all the credit in the world, and I am jealous as hell about it, but we found the value. And what was the value? The value was that everyone was afraid that they were going to lose their job and they couldn't pay for their cars. They needed the cars to go to work. They needed the cars to take kids to school. They needed to pick up groceries. They needed the car. And they were afraid they couldn't pay for it. So what did Hyundai do? They took that value and they translated it into the assurance program. Basically, they went, don't worry. You lose your job, don't worry. Don't worry about it. Sales in the year prior to them had been 2%, 2% share. That year, with an industry down 36%, they were up 14%, 7 times the previous year. And the assurance program is the tentpole that they currently use for everything that they do. Now, the issue is if you remember your history, and I'll give you an example from today as well. If you remember your history, a week later, everyone was doing it. They all went, oh, no, don't worry, we'll do it too. But consumers remember who was there first.
Are you getting your data by surveying the consumer?
Yeah.
So it's all consumer.
100% consumer driven.
And how do you go into your market segments? Is it by someone who has already purchased the product, thinking about purchasing the product? How do you develop your database, your consumer database?
The database that we look at for the index are all people who classify for category participation and then are customers of a particular brand.
So these are people that have already bought a car or stayed at a hotel or flown on the airline.
Right.
And
right. Because it makes no sense to talk to it. It would make sense to talk to someone who used to fly the airline or used to stay at the hotel. But it makes no sense for me to talk to someone who's never stayed at the hotel because they have no real basis for making an assessment about the brand. All they might know is the name.
So you're not looking at future, would you stay at a Marriott in the future?
Well,
If you're current, or is that part of the questionnaire?
it's a question you can ask, but the metrics that we use in terms of engagement are based against an ideal for the category. And so brands that best meet the expectations that consumers hold for the ideal generally do a lot better than those that are weak or that don't. And our correlations with our metrics, for those of you who are interested in this kind of research data, correlations with our metrics and positive behavior, meaning we can track same-store sales or increased occupancy rates, end up being higher than 0.80, which is about twice what any social scientist would then dance naked and open champagne on the tabletop with. I mean, so they're high correlations.
Are you looking? Are you looking at the the person who stays frequently? Is there or they've only been there once or 100 times? How many nights? How do you select your criteria?
There's the screening changes for every category. If you, I mean, hotels, if we look at it from the business person's perspective, they have to have stayed 6 or more times in the past year. Not this year, of course, but in previous years. Versus if you were doing out-of-home coffee, you have to indicate a visitation of 3+ times a week. I mean, generally, we're talking in the 15 to 20% range, customer range in terms of that. So you've got to qualify. I mean, if you're, I unfortunately don't get to take 6 months of vacation every year. So if I'm staying at a hotel, I'm looking at that from a tourism perspective, 2+ times a year.
Do you do your survey? Do you send your questionnaire out online or do you post it? How do people get your survey?
It's done online through our digital arm.
You know what? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Thomas.
No, for instance, if you go to the hotels, I've been surveyed by, staying 180 nights in hotels in Normandy. So I'm a premium member with most of the brands. And I see a lot of these surveys. What always drives me crazy with these surveys is when I have an issue, I wanted to really communicate. For instance, one of my issues I had is when you attend an event in one of the brands or in all of the brand hotels, you don't get any points if you book your room through the event organizer. So there goes all the loyalty. There's no sense because you get nothing for it. So if you wanted to communicate this when all the surveys you're receiving don't have this question. And so I'm wondering why there is never an open field where you can actually voice your frustration, because when a survey is sent, obviously it's meant to make something better or to get some data, what could be done better.
Well, I agree with you, and that's not the kind of questionnaire that we send out. Our questionnaire is a combination of a psychological aspect about the questionnaire, about the category, and then some really neat higher order statistical analyses. I won't take up time now, but if you go to the BrandKey's site, it describes how and what we do. Going back to what you said, we look at a category ideal, and because category ideals are generally unconstrained by reality, as it were, You know, how high up is however high up you feel. We see that expectations grow at about, consumer expectations grow at about 22 to 27% a year on average, higher in the tech category because, come on, it's technology. You always, you know, you expect AI and 3D from that stuff. And every year they give you a little bit more. But generally speaking, the brands only keep up by about 6 or 7%. So that gap between the 25%, call it, and the 7% presents an opportunity for people. It tells you that there's something going on in the brandscape that people really ought to attend to. I mean, that's the place where you're going to mine to find the best things that are going to make people loyal.
The recession has changed our buying behavior. Certainly at the beginning because of scarcity, and then again because of quarantine. What are the tourism industry companies doing in order to deal with their new, very harsh reality?
Well, you know, I mean, this shows you, it shows, initially, it showed you that the industry really wasn't thinking from a consumer perspective. You know, on the one hand, you can't really turn and blame an entire industry, in this case, you know, airlines or hotels, for not understanding what the hell was going on, because nobody understood what was going on. I mean, even the people that, you know, that we rely on today that have a better understanding thought that things were going to be different. I don't know whether that, you know, I don't know whether that's just informational, political, or purely economic. I mean, because when things went south because of the pandemic, you know, the first reaction from hotels and airlines was, okay, you know what, we'll give you 2 weeks. You can make reservations and put your reservations off for 2 weeks. And then they went through all this, you know, ridiculousness of, well, we're going to keep your money, but we'll let you use it within 6 months. And then it was, you know, we'll have it, but it'll be next year. I mean, they didn't understand, and they basically, you know, to use the gambling term, they crapped out on what do your customers need, what do your customers want, what do your customers expect.
Yeah, they cut the customer out of their business equation,
right.
And they became silos and just talk to each other.
I mean, your expectation, you know, eventually, you know, I've said this, you know, yes, uncertainty was literally in the air, but they didn't catch on, and it was, let me just sidebar about loyalty. Loyal customers are 6 times more likely to give a brand the benefit of the doubt in uncertain circumstances. So the best example, because you've all seen it in the paper, it was actually Chipotle, which had an extraordinarily high loyalty rate, and then went through 7 rounds of poisonings. You know, not intentional. I mean, you know, all the best efforts, but 7 rounds of poisonings. Customers stuck with them through the first 6. I'm not because I say 6 times, but it just worked out that way. The 7th time, the brand hit the skids and they lost 60% of their value. And they've spent years now trying to build it back. So The issue is with, if you can actually measure loyalty, which we do, you've got a better bet at doing things where the consumer will actually be forgiving about what you were going to do. I give you an example, and it's one that I've just read about. I haven't experienced myself because I haven't been on a plane in over a year. But Delta is number one in our survey, and Delta was the first ones who went, all right, we got to get this thing off the ground, but you know what? We'll leave the middle seats empty. We'll give you space. We'll mask up, we'll clean, we'll do this, we'll do that, but there's space. And then a lot of the airlines followed it. But a lot of the airlines have gone, you know what? We ain't making money. This is terrible. And so now fill in the middle seat. I think Delta has indicated that they will be keeping the middle seat open until May, the end of May 1st. I don't know, but
were you doing any when it was clear that the pandemic was not going to be an overnight disaster? Were you called in to obtain some information from the consumer in order to guide the decisions of the hotels and the airlines? And clearly, the cruise ships did not speak to you, but did other segments of the industry speak?
We didn't. We don't currently have a client in either of those categories. We monitor the category. I write about the category. There have been other industries, proprietary work that's been done, where we were called in about this kind of thing. And I was going to say that if you want an example of, we're all in this together. I mean, that may have sounded good at the PR or ad presentation, but consumers realized that we were not all in it together, and that just saying that we were all in it together did not engender a sense of loyalty or emotional engagement. But we did have one of our insurance clients who turned around and said, we came back and pointed some things out. And again, not my advertising, but where they went, you know what, Elinor, you're not driving your car and you're not going to work. You don't drive your car. You know what? We're going to give you money back. You paid us for the car insurance. We're going to give you money back because we know you're not using the car. We know you could use it for something else. That's the kind of thing. And then, of course, a week later, everyone else is, every other insurance company is saying it. But people remember who the first one was to do it. So it's those kinds of things.
You want to show us your presentation, your visual, the one with the quadrants? Can you pull that up?
Oh, yeah, I can. I hope you can actually. Okay, hold on. Okay. Shares. Host disabled screen share. The host has disabled screen sharing. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, no. I did, but let me put it back on for you. Just 1 second. Sorry. Okay, you should be good now. There you go.
Okay, let me see if I can. Sorry about that. What we did was we've looked at what we call 2 stress points for brands in terms of loyalty. One being emotional engagement. Essentially, emotional engagement says that from an emotional perspective, there is some connection and meaning that the brand has established between its customers and itself. Not awareness, not awareness. Awareness doesn't count. Everyone knows everything. An emotional connection, some sort of meaning. And then the second was whether or not you were able to meet my expectation. Now, again, let me say that this is all judged against an ideal. And so ideals are always higher than what reality reflects until someone does something to change that paradigm. And then it moves up again. And most brands do not meet the expectations consumers hold for the ideal. Be fair. Used to be in technology, when new technology came out, and before we all got real smart about technology, Apple, sometimes Samsung, sometimes even Microsoft would actually exceed expectations that we held for certain drivers. But that's not really the case. And so the quadrant map itself essentially says I either have high emotional engagement or I have low emotional engagement, and I either am meeting expectations or I'm not. I mean, I used to use the term exceeding expectations, and that's become a favorite of advertising and promotional videos and such. But the truth is that expectations do move faster than brands are able to move. Also consider from the perspective of of any category that while we're talking about categories being, well, individual sectors as they were categories, they're categories for a reason, they don't have walls built up around them. And so loyalty and values and expectation tends to move like an oil spill. I mean, something may happen in one category, but it really isn't contained within that category. It tends to spread.
You know what in your category 1, do you know, is there a thread between the Marriotts and the Ritz-Carlton and the Fairmont? Is there something that the consumer has identified that gives them gives them the emotional response that places them in this category? Can you isolate that?
Well, you're talking about a number of different categories because, what's there are, is airline, high-end hotel, low-end hotel, mid-scale hotel, online travel with the Airbnb. So they're all going to be different. And Elinor, to be quite honest with you, with almost 900 brands in the survey, I'm not always sure precisely what values are in operation at any moment in time.
So there's no way for a Marriott executive to,
or no, we have diagnostics, but I've got a book this thick that I'd have to go through.
Okay. So that someone that works so an executive with Motel 6 could say to you, I want to move into the number 1 category with the Hampton Inn, which is probably the closest to what that might be. What are they doing? What is this? Right. What do we extract from their management style or their on-premise activities that I can adapt and adopt in order to bring me from my category 4 of low emotional involvement to category 1?
Right. We need to look at the diagnostics that we have for each one of the categories, and that would tell you which particular loyalty driver or drivers you need to concentrate on, what the makeup of those drivers are, and then you can take it apart and be able to establish whether or not you are you're able, from either a delivery perspective or a pure construct perspective, to be able to deliver against it. I'm going to tell you, I'm making this up now. At this point, just to give an example, totally made up. I don't know whether or not, well, I know amenities are always part of the drivers in terms of the hotel category. Certainly a lot higher expectations and more of a contributor to loyalty for the luxury hotels than they are for the, the mid-scale or downscale hotels. But what if I said to you, well, you need to be able to have these kind of amenities in order to be able to move up to better meet expectations? Now the question is whether or not, from an economic perspective, it makes sense to invest in that kind of an initiative, or whether or not it's not going to help. I mean, let me just say that moving from the lower left-hand quadrant to the upper right-hand quadrant is not something that is easily accomplished. It is something that takes years to do.
Well, it took Motel 6 some years to move down to the number 4. So
Now,
they
in that category,
didn't
I'm not
start out
sure,
at number 4.
I'm not sure where they stand within their own sector. I don't mean, I just, but, and this was just an overview. It wasn't all of it, because we look at, God, we must look at 30 or 40 different hotel brands within the sectors themselves. I mean, in the same way that we look at, I guess, 12 or 13 of the airlines, the national airlines that are available, and are only listing a couple here. These were set as examples of where things fell. I had sent you I don't have access to the map itself that we sent you, the PowerPoint map, but I mean, that gives a good view of things from a comparable perspective, I think.
Okay, I think we're going to ask if any of the listener who have been listeners would like to ask Robert some questions. Thomas, can you monitor?
There's a lot of engagement in our chat group. And as I said, you can raise your hand also. I'm trying to go through it.
Jim has his hand up.
I'm sorry.
I had my hand up, that's all, she said.
Oh, yeah, it's not, yeah, I don't know who I was, but there is a button on the right side. You don't have to raise physically your hand. We don't necessarily see that.
I raised
But whoever said go ahead and go first, and we go through the list.
On a wonderful chart that you had there, I really appreciated that. My question was, though, it doesn't spill out all the different brands. So the low-end Marriotts and the high-end Marriotts and the low-end Hilton, the high-end Hilton are not broken out. And I'm just wondering, did you see much variation within the category? Because when it says JW Marriott, that high-end hotels aren't quite the same as Fairfield, for example.
And absolutely. I mean, that's why I said we probably looked at 30 brands, and that chart was not a giveaway in terms of every hotel brand that we look at. It was to give some sense of representation within the quadrant itself. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And I would also say that from a loyalty perspective, there are nuances. I mean, where one is forced from just a rational perspective to be able to speak about things, to say, well, this hotel was number one in terms of loyalty. Number two, I mean, it could be the difference, on a mathematical basis of, 5 or 10% difference. So the rankings themselves are interesting, but not, I think, terribly useful in terms of being able to plan. You really do want the diagnostics, and as you can understand, I mean, that's how we make a living, doing that. But the diagnostics, I think, I think the diagnostics are extraordinarily helpful.
No, that was excellent. One quick comment, and I'll get off of here.
Yeah.
But you talked about delight turning to expectation, and in one of the seminars that you ran, Jurgen, one of the parties talked about amenity creep. In other words, it's an amenity, and all of a sudden it's a standard, and then it's another amenity. And they were talking about having to drop some money. I think the wonderment was, can we get away with not coming back with all those amenities again with the COVID slowdown?
Well, I want to say that people understand the situation. I mean, and this is, from the perspective of airlines and hotels, restaurants as well. And I was just actually looking over a 2021 report we're doing for a client that's in a food category. And generally speaking, when we look at category values, while I know that there are lots and lots of them, I mean, you want these contained. And so we look at anything from 25 to 35 values, which give us a sense of what's going on. I mean, this is a syndicated piece that we're doing. There are 9 new values in one category, and they're all COVID related. I mean, yes, exactly. Wow is right. 9 new values, and I can't tell you whether or not those are going to become expectations or not. But let me just circle back around and say that since I think the hotels didn't really do a very good job initially at this, stop and think about any place you go now. A hotel is a good example, but think about anywhere you go, and when you walk through the door, they have a Purell dispenser. And think how well you think, and I know you don't articulate it, but I would bet dollars to donuts that someplace in your head you went, yeah, okay, these people are taking care of me. These people understand there's a problem. They put this out. It's free. So how's that 20% off coupon looking compared to the Purell dispenser?
Do you have other questions?
Yes, there, Tim, thank you very much. And I apologize because you did raise your hand. I have a new computer. I'm fighting with this, as you can see, but I'm getting used to it. So next session will be easier. I think Colin Bidewell had a comment. Colin, if you're still there, go ahead.
Hi guys, gosh, my word, yes, I had quite a comment basically. I guess it's the whole thing around corporate social responsibility, investors having good cash and being seen to do the right thing. Because I guess a lot of the chat that we've had at the moment has been around sort of loyalty, i.e. consumer driven, and obviously you've got Euromonitor and everyone else, the market research houses saying that people have become more aware of what sustainability is and wellness, etc. But so what, I guess the question is, to what degree do you think it's going to be consumer driven versus investor driven? But basically investors being seen to invest responsibly.
Well, I'd like to think that it was 50-50, but I don't think it is. I think it's going to be consumer driven. I don't think there are a lot of brands out there that walk the talk. I think a lot of brands have been forced into things because they feel that they have to. In fact, I read an article yesterday. I was thinking how to couch this. I mean, I want a polo mallet and some drugs to go after the author of the article, because they're talking about how everyone's aware of brand purpose, these days, and issues like sustainability and such. And I don't think that there are a lot of brands out there that have embraced it fully. I think that many of them either get forced into it or are doing a dance around it. But ultimately, what do they say? Money talks, the consumer walks. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be how satisfied are your customers with what you're doing and how loyal will they remain. Loyal customer, lifetime value of loyal customers still applies. So I think it's going to be driven by customers.
Okay.
Do you have other questions?
I think Annette Botticcio, you had a question or a comment? You can unmute yourself.
She's done. I have another one.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Well, you mentioned the 9 new values in the because of COVID-19. Did I happen to miss that? Did you go through them at all, or not, or could you send us an email of what they are? That sounds fascinating.
If you reach out to me, I can get you that information. I mean, what I talked about, the expectation that people hold for the ideal and how there's a gap between what the brand delivers. I mean, essentially it's desire versus delivery. And when we see gaps like that, we look to develop customer language that may be responses to it. I have to say that in the instance of a lot of the COVID-19 sensitive categories, like restaurants, like hotels, like airlines, I mean, those things kind of spelled themselves out. I mean, consumers were there and ready to go. This is what I need. This is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. I mean, part of it being that a lot of it is process and a lot of it is something new that everyone had to learn.
Right.
But there were folks who were ahead of the game and smarter than others initially.
And Jürgen, we can get Robert's email.
Yes, we put it on the hospitality group, and I wanted to mention this also. We started a hospitality interest group, and we invite you to join. You can really go just to contact when you go to the WTN World Tourism Network website. Hopefully, Robert will join us, and you're welcome to take a role in this, or maybe we can even add a loyalty group, what would benefit a lot of our members. But we're going to try to put this up, whatever, Robert, you can send us, and we'll be happy to share your contact.
Tim, you can also do a reach out on our site on brandkeys.com.
Right.
And
Okay.
Annette had a question?
Yeah, we have Annette Boccia. She's now with you see her now. So let's.
Yes.
You see her now.
I clicked her away.
Yeah.
A mistake.
Don't stick with me.
Yeah, I mean, I hello everybody. I actually have several questions and remarks. I used to work.
Where you are. I'm sorry.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Could you just
Yeah, so
everyone where you're from and who you are?
okay, so I'm Annette Botticcio, and I used to be regional vice president for Hyatt hotels. And then COVID dropped in, so I'm not anymore. But anyhow, I'm very passionate about loyalty programs, etc. Having worked also for hotel brands without loyalty programs. But my really question is, regardless of COVID, and you, I think you mentioned it yourself, Jürgen, or I don't remember who, that everybody today, every frequent traveler has frequent and often several loyalty programs. So how does it really match, and what is the deeper sense of loyalty? Because you can't be loyal to everybody. And we have here, when you have your gold member and primary status with Hilton, with Hyatt, with Accor, with whomsoever, how does it really, what is the deeper sense behind it, and what is really this irrational loyalty that can make the difference. Because I do understand irrational loyalty when you come to consistent service and to a consistent product all around the world, like we talking about iPhones or Apple or whatever is IT devices or luxury goods. But when it comes to hotels, I'm really a little bit puzzled about what is the deeper meaning of this in your eyes.
Well, I think part of it is emotional engagement, and depends on the construct, what category you're talking about, what the competitive set looks like. I mean, I agree with you. Well, as I said, I do not think that membership programs have anything to do with loyalty. I mean, they just don't.
It's only the name.
Well, we can have the economic discussion about how, companies have, what they're carrying on their balance sheets on the basis of what they promised to give people for things. But as a matter of choice, I mean, you've said it, I said it before, you really can't be loyal to 27.8% of the airlines and look at that as a loyalty measure. I mean, it just doesn't work. The conference that I spoke about in Rome, the issue about what's a smile worth, came off something that we were actually doing with Marriott here in the United States, where go down the list of what it is, the customer journey, if you will,
Yeah.
You pull up, you come in, someone greets you, they take your bag, they give you this, you go in, you check in, you go upstairs to the room, or someone takes you upstairs to the room, and the room is prepared and clean and ready. And now we're done. Because generally speaking, Elinor's bedbug notwithstanding, that's what it's like. You've gotten the system down. So the question is it a matter of some emotional perspective that you can look at? That the example I always think of is why people went out to Los Angeles and stayed at the cabanas at the Beverly Hills Hotel when there were lots of luxurious hotels. There was a sense of status that went with it, and that means something to people. That resonates with people. Although I will also point out that a lot of what we pick up in terms of these values are not necessarily things that people want to articulate. I mean, that's why we use psychological inquiry rather than going, hey, Annette, do you want to feel like a big star and stay someplace? Because it's really probably not likely that you're going to say to me, yes. You're absolutely right, Robert. That's exactly what I want to feel like. I want to feel like a celebrity. But you might inside, and there might be things that you were able to do that would be able to resonate with those kind of values.
Well, we're almost out of time, and Annette, just to add for it, because you mentioned the word Hyatt, I've been a globalist with Hyatt for many years, and I have to say, even though in my case maybe I'm a different consumer, I'm also a gold member with Marriott, and I'm something with Hilton, I don't even know. But I am, when I choose a hotel, I know, and I've been trained as a consumer, I need to go to the Hyatt website. I cannot go to Expedia because I won't get points. When I book it at the Hyatt websites, I get my loyalty thing. And I know when I get to a Hyatt hotel, I get my free breakfast, but I don't always get. So that's a point I always think it's important. But more important, when I go to a Hyatt hotel so far, I get treated well. And maybe it's a celebrity type of feeling you're getting. I love to stay in Abu Dhabi in a penthouse suite, where I can entertain 200 people for a $100 rate. So Hyatt has done this. And I think every time I go to a Hyatt hotel, people call me by name, even though some have never seen me. Other hotels I stay frequently and they know my name. So it is a home feeling. And depending, I think, maybe what status you reach within a loyalty system, if it comes to me and I have a choice staying between a Marriott where I'm a gold member or a Hyatt where I'm a globalist, I would always choose the Hyatt. But that is me. And I'm not representing the entire industry, but the loyalty
No,
program.
no, but it's good to know, and I think it's very, because I mean that was obviously a risk also, and then when people said when Starwood and Marriott merged, for instance, that the loyalty program basically, yes, you have a greater, bigger distribution, but you lose on value at one point and of benefits, and obviously that was the threat when Hyatt is growing now bigger and bigger, and they are now at over 900 hotels. I think that is very important, that this personal touch obviously is still granted, whether you have been or you had been in a hotel, yes or no. And then I think you can get this irrational loyalty because you want to get that welcome feeling all over the day. And so it's not only about amenities, it's really about the guest experience we were talking about before. So I'm very glad that you mentioned that it works, or whether you are the one and only or not, but at least on you it works. So it's very good, and it's very positive, because I'm always, yeah, again, I did do the comparison with iPad and Apple and whatsoever, because I think very often clients expect from a brand that you have consistency, and that is obviously, it's so difficult within hotels and even airlines, because obviously the regional touch or the local flavor must be guaranteed. So it's difficult in my eyes to have this consistency and the experience that is all over. So but I'm very happy that you have the guest experience that worked for you, and I hope that for the others it's working as well.
And you have a really good point in hotels growing. You need to have people behind the front desk that represents the soul of a brand. It is not only you staying at the brand and they have a script what they're supposed to say. They have to you have to at least think they mean it. And that's a very important thing. And I kind of noticed this with Marriott when they ate Starwood. This soul in many of the stays I had kind of disappeared. It became more like a routine. But that may be, again, my personal feeling, and that may be the hotel you stay. But we are out of time. I'm really sorry. We have the next event coming up in 12 minutes.
I apologize for talking too much.
No, Robert, this was a fascinating session, and I hope we can reach more of this. And Elinor, thank you so much for putting this together. And I will give both of you the final words and let Elinor guide me here. But I wanted to say thank you to everyone for attending. Thank you for everyone who is live. Now, just stay tuned. If you're watching us on eTurbo News or live stream, we'll have another event coming up in about 12 minutes from now. We're going to talk about air quality in hotels. And those that wanted to be part of this audience and ask questions, just go to worldtourismevents.com. You can sign up, and you can also watch past events if you just go to livestream.travel. We have hundreds of events we did. We have a lot of podcasts. All our articles on eTurbo News are now also podcasts, so you can listen to us all day and all night long. And most important, if you're not yet a member for World Tourism Network, please join us. On March 5th, we have our 1-year anniversary. And I'm going again to Hyatt because we started this on March 5th, the discussion on rebuilding travel at the Grand Hyatt Hotel in Berlin, when ITB itself was canceled. But we had our small event at the Hyatt, and that's when rebuilding.travel and later on the World Tourism Network, what now has members in 127 countries, is continuing this discussion. And many of you, of course, are part of our group, and thank you for this. But my last word to Elinor, and I'm sure she will give Robert a chance to say good night. From my end, aloha, and I'll talk to you hopefully in 10 minutes.
And thank you, Robert, for joining us. Could you just tell us your email and your website for those people that may have a pen handy? It will be on the program once it's online and archived, but just in case before we leave.
Yeah, Elinor, maybe it's better. We can actually put it when we do the archive. If you give, we can put it on the screen so people, when they didn't see the session, they can see it for a few minutes.
Okay, well, we can just do it quickly now for those people that are still here. Robert, your website?
The email's easy. It's Robert, the usual way, initial P, Robert P, at BrandKeys, BrandKeys.com. And the website is brandkeys.com. So go take a look. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the interest. Thank you very much. I hope all of you are well and safe. And I look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you again. And thanks for everybody for joining us this afternoon. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. See you in 10 minutes.